Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for a live webinar with the PMO Squad. My name is Rachel Hentress, and I'm the Director of Marketing here. Joining myself is Joe Puz, who is the founder and CEO of the PMO Squad. And today we're excited to give a different take to a typical webinar style with more of a TED Talk format with a thought-provoking, hopefully gives you a little bit of things to think about as a project professional around the organizational project delivery journey. If you've attended our webinars before, our most recent one, I guess, we introduced that topic. And this is our chance to dive much deeper into that. And so, Joe, let's kick it off maybe with a poll question.
Yeah. So for everybody, part of what we're doing today is problem solving related, right? We work in PMOs and project management, and we have that. So just in the chat, right? Type in, does your organization or yourself, do you have any formal specific problem solving techniques and tools that you use? Some of the ones I've used in the past could be 5 whys, root cause analysis as some examples. Share with us, drop in the chat. What are some of problem-solving tools and techniques that you all use?
Yeah, and I've got the poll up right now. We'll share those results momentarily. But as Joe mentioned, if you have a specific way that you're doing that, we'd love to hear, I guess, what techniques or tools you're using to, for those of you that do say yes, what tools and techniques you're using to do that. So I'm going to end the poll just so that we can share the results with everybody. And you should be seeing on your screen now that 54% do indeed have a specific problem-solving technique or tool that they use, with 47% saying, nope, we do not.
Interesting. Well,
yeah,
that's kind of, 50-50. I wonder why it isn't 100-0 as a yes, right? So let's think a little bit about OPD and why we're doing this. In our discussion a couple of weeks back, we talked about the why, because what we're doing in the industry isn't quite working the way we need it to. So we need to get better, right? We have to try something different because for 54 years, it's been the same thing over and over and over. And it's kind of the version of insanity that Einstein had thrown out to us. So OPD is about something different. That's the why. And at the end of our session last time, we asked, who wants to join the movement, right? We're going to create a movement over this. And everybody was, yes, 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 yes. We want to be part of this. We want to be part of the movement. So that was what we did in the last session. For this session, it's about what is organizational project delivery. And then in subsequent sessions that are going to come up in the following weeks and months, we're going to look at how do you actually do it. So this one, I'm not going to come in and just map it all out, right? I'm not going to give you a specifically, this is exactly what OPD is, because that would be boring. That would be a lecture and nobody would be interested. So I'm going to tell some stories today. Some of them probably are very aligned to what we're going to be talking about in our industry with project delivery. But other of them, I'm hoping to make you think and drive your thought process to get us to what really is OPD and what are we trying to accomplish when we use it. So let's dig in. First topic, first story is about multiple sclerosis. So multiple sclerosis is a global disease that it impacts everybody. You pop in the chat if you know somebody that has multiple sclerosis or more than one person. I personally grew up with, I played a lot of baseball, and one of the moms for the kids on the team had multiple sclerosis. So I've known about multiple sclerosis since being a kid. And unfortunately, over time, of course, her disease and disability progressed, and eventually she passed away. And I think I'm not alone in that journey. I think we've all had a common journey. And unfortunately, there isn't a cure for multiple sclerosis. I'm not a doctor, so today is not going to be about me telling you anything that I'm an expert in. But what I plan to share is information that made me see a connection to our industry and project management because I'm kind of wired to view patterns. And I see some patterns in nature that repeat themselves. And it's a matter of us, do we recognize those things and deal things with them? Now, multiple sclerosis historically has been an anti-inflammatory type disease. Swelling enters the spinal cord, enters the brain, and there's medicines to be able to treat the inflammation that's created from multiple sclerosis. However, what happens when we treat just the inflammation is there's a cycle within the treatment and cure, not cures, but treatment of MS. It's called remitting and remission. So as you experience MS, you have symptoms. And that's this increase that you see in the chart. And then you receive an anti-inflammatory, and it brings the symptoms down, and it's as if you've gone into remission. But over a period of time, it continues. You go into a relapse once again, and then you go into remission. And actually, they call this relapsing and remitting MS. It's this period and cycle of time of where you feel bad, you get a treatment, you feel better, then you feel bad. But all the time, disability keeps getting worse. So the treatment of the symptom isn't resolving your MS. It's just minimizing the impact. And ultimately, what that looks like when you get your anti-inflammatory drugs is that those symptom spikes go away. But the disability over time still happens. And we all know where that eventually gets to. Now, as I said, I am by no means an expert in this, but I think for more information about this, you would want to go look at the link we have here. There's a researcher up in Saskatchewan, University of Saskatchewan in Canada, Dr. Michael Levin. And he's done some breakthrough research. Over time, people have looked at how can we improve the way we reduce the amount of inflammation in the body for an MS patient and make their life better. But Dr. Levin and his research team examined MS from a different perspective. They said, why are we not trying to find a way to stop the disability? As opposed to treating just the symptom, maybe we need to be thinking about the actual pain that's there. How do we minimize that? How do we remove that? How do we possibly cure this? And Dr. Levin has a great TED Talk. If you like TED Talks, go out there, just do a search, Dr. Levin, MS, and it'll pop up. It's only been out there for a couple of weeks. So this is the typical progression that somebody goes through when they're dealing with MS. But when Dr. Levin approached this differently, there's a nerve cell problem. Yes, anti-inflammatories help ease the symptoms. But when they examined patients that had MS in their brains, they determined that they have a reduction in nerve cells. And not only are the nerve cells dying, the ones who are alive aren't connecting to other nerve cells. And when they kept looking deeper and deeper, they said, what's causing this? What is making this happen within nerve cells? What they identified is there's a protein in our nerve cells called A1. You may have heard about this in MS, it's in ALS, it's in a couple of different diseases that are out there. And the A1 protein, again, I'm not a doctor, listen to a real one about this, but I'm trying to provide this in our context. The A1 protein goes to a different part of the cell. It reacts different in an MS cell than it does in a healthy patient nerve cell. So Dr. Levin and his team said, well, what if we identify a medicine that can make that A1 protein act in a patient with MS just like it acts in a healthy patient? And lo and behold, it worked. On the left side, you can see nerve cell that has the A1 protein in the bad spot. It's not behaving the way it's supposed to. And you can see it's just an individual cell that's there. There's no connection to the other nerve cells. And therefore, the patient's losing their ability for their nerves and muscles and thoughts and everything to be able to connect in the way that it's supposed to in a healthy body. But on the right, you can see now this bright pink. It has blown up this image to be able to see how healthy nerve cells are connected, react, and respond to one another. All because we treated this protein to behave and mimic the way a healthy protein's supposed to be. They went to the source. This is fairly early on in everything. This has only been out there for a few years, but what they've been able to observe is patients who get this medicine, the disability stops progressing. It doesn't cure it. It doesn't remove MS from the body, but if you take the anti-inflammatory to remove the spikes in symptoms that we see here, and then also stop the progression, you may get the disease to stop before that massive upswing happens. So in nature, we're seeing something that is behaving abnormally. We can then mimic a medicine to treat that mimicking and make it act the way it's supposed to. And the body responds to that and brings the nerve cells back to connection and functioning the way it needs to be. So that's kind of cool, right? I thought it was pretty kind of cool. So I think about this in everything that I do and say, how does this fit into project management, right? Why are we talking about multiple sclerosis in the setting of a project management discussion? And for me, it's because of the patterns I talked about, right? The seasons occur year after year after year, winter, spring, summer, fall, right? It doesn't change from one year to the next. It's always that same pattern, right? Every snowflake is unique. That's a pattern of uniqueness. There's 24 hours in a day. Some days aren't 16 and some days aren't 30. It's a pattern. Everything around us is patterned. So when I see a pattern like this appear, I try to come into my world, into my existence in the project management space and say, where can I find another example of where this type of pattern is taking place? Where is the A1 protein in project management being misplaced and causing nerve cells or project management to have a disability? And if we fix that, can we get all the nerve cells to connect once again? And of course, I was able to find some patterns. So where does that bring us? Story number 2. Inattentional blindness. I don't know if anybody's heard of this before or not. It's not the most common topic in the world. If you have, it's pretty fascinating, right? Inattentional blindness is a psychological phenomenon that causes us to miss things that are right in front of our eyes. Again, what's this have to do with project management? We'll get to that in a second. But back in the 70s, some psychologists did some tests, and they brought people together and asked them to watch a video. All of the people watching the video had good vision. They either had corrective lenses like I do with glasses, or their eyes were fine. And the ask was for those folks to watch the video of basketball players passing the ball to one another and to count the number of times that the ball got passed. Very simple ask. They play the video and they ask the people afterwards, how many passes? Some people said 5, some people said 6. They were slightly off on some of their numbers. Some people were consistent. But what was crazy is the doctors then asked them, did you see anything other than the passes? And then everybody said no. During the passing of the basketball, a woman walked in between the basketball players carrying an umbrella, and nobody saw her. That was unintentional blindness. They were so focused on the passes and counting them that they weren't able to observe something unusual that was right in front of them. Their vision is fine, but they're blind to something beyond what they're focusing on. This probably happens to all of us all the time. You can think, maybe when you're driving a car and all of a sudden you end up at your destination and you're like, how did I get here? What did I just miss driving there? Because you were so focused on a thought in your mind that you weren't even seeing the things that were in front of you. Well, I think this also happens with us in organizations. We can be so focused on a project management issue that perhaps we're not seeing all of the issues that are around us. Give you an example. We had a client come to us a couple of years back, and she asked, hey, can you help us solve a resource management problem we're having? First initial reaction was, of course, we can help you with resource management. But what if we were to find something else that's not working well for you? What if something else in the organization's not working the way it's supposed to? And she said, that's fine, whatever, but I need you to focus on resource management. That's what we have to fix. So I said, okay, we'll do this. If you let us do a full assessment of everything, we'll come back and fix resource management. But do you agree that if we find something else, you'll work on that? She said, of course, but nothing else is broken. It's only resource management. She had inattentive blindness. She wasn't seeing anything else around her. She had talked about, we don't have enough people, or people are overworked, our projects are being delivered late, we're not delivering to our annual plan. She was describing portfolio prioritization issues. She was describing strategic alignment issues. She was describing scheduling issues. All of these things she couldn't see because she was so focused on just resource management. So what do we do in our industry? We come in and we apply anti-inflammatory medicines. We come in and say, I'll give you a different way to do resource management. We're going to minimize the impact of your disability, our disability of being able to deliver projects well, because we're going to say, let's do staggered scheduling. Let's do strategic alignment. Let's improve the way we prioritize. But we're not really getting to the source of the problem. All we're doing is treating the symptom that the organization is facing. So it's making the patient feel better temporarily. We're doing it with good intent, just like a doctor treating MS. They're not trying to intentionally have a patient not be cured. They don't have a cure, so they're doing the best they can with good intentions. But what we did after our assessment is we came up with 11 findings. Resource management was one of the 11 findings. And when we work on all 11 together, we're able to do like they did with the nerve cell repair on the MS. We're able to identify connection points that we can make a very bright pink picture for an organization when we start thinking about the connections. So inattentive blindness and treatment of symptoms go hand in hand, just like they do from MS to what we do within project delivery. So now let's get to story number 3. Story number 3, back in 2007, 2008, I was working for Textron organization, a big global conglomerate. I was on a leadership track to become a future CIO in the organization. And one of the benefits of that program I was in was to get executive training. So I attended MIT for my executive certificate in leadership back in 2007, 2008, I believe it was. And while I was there, I took a course that changed my life forever, and it was system dynamics. We're all thinking about the time of PMO Joe as this project management person, but project management has just been in my DNA. But as a career, it came later in life, right? I had other careers, just like most of you, before you were in PMOs and project management. So you take these things that we learned in prior lives and bring them forward with us. And when we take something like systems dynamics, you'll see how it makes us understand how things work together. Typically, the way things work, and you've all seen these before, is a PMO leader and a project manager lay out open loop models, right? We're going to define it, design it, build it, validate it, deploy it, right? System and SDLC structure, or maybe to get project approval. We're going to request it. We got to have a business case. We're going to put it in for portfolio review. We're going to do a resource review, and then we're going to assign a priority. These open loop models are linear, but this isn't how the world operates. In our brain as PMO leaders, we draw out a process because that's how we want it to work. But that's not how it works. And it's open loop because it doesn't receive any feedback. There's nothing that closes off what's happening. It's just an ongoing linear progression of work. It doesn't take into account that when portfolio management or a business case isn't done well, how do all of the other connected systems impact that? How are they related? And that's where systems dynamics comes into play with the closed loop model. If we think back to those linear progressions, look how simple they are compared to what really happens in a systems dynamics organization. This is just project delivery. This isn't portfolio management, resource management, prioritization, and all the other processes that take place within an organization related to project delivery. Look how complex this is compared to the other flatline linear open loop models, right? This is like the nerve cells from the MS patient that have been reactivated when the A1 is put into the right place. When we start looking at how organizations actually function, not how we want them to function, and we start capturing feedback and bringing it together, it brightens up the pink reaction of a healthy organization. This is what it really looks like. Now, at the same time, I'm also aware that nobody is going to be able to deal with this. Nobody can work with this. This is too complex. People aren't going to understand it. And it's not something that we could take to executives and they could buy into and understand. So when we think of a simplified version of this, this is organizational project delivery. Notice that each of the steps along the journey are circular in nature. It's a closed loop. It's a feedback coming back into the process where the organization is collectively working as one. It's a thriving nerve network system within the body of the organization, not the body of the individual. So MS takes a protein and causes us to have symptoms. As a world, we've not been able to cure that. So we treat those symptoms, much like we do with project management, where we treat the symptom of resource management by trying to put a different way to solve resource management. Make the symptom go away for today because we'll try a different way of doing it. But until we attack the cause, the source of what's really happening, we're stuck, right? We're never making the progress. We're caught in an infinite loop of failure after failure after failure with project success rates in the 40s, 50s, and 60%. So systems dynamics thinking allows us to take inattentive blindness away, allow us to see how things are all interconnected, and then allows us to build a healthy network of nerve systems. So how does it work? Well, that's what we're going to get to in subsequent webinars afterwards. But what is it? OPD is a simplified view of a complex set of systems that occur and interlap with one another in an organization so that all of those things working together make the organization healthy. It removes our disability of poor project delivery because we've connected them and we're getting feedback loops throughout the process to be able to adjust. That's a quick walkthrough, hopefully, to make you think a little bit more and differently about what we've been doing in our industry and with OPD. So, really fast walk through that. It was intentional. But the question is, do you now have a better understanding of what OPD is? And can you personalize that? Does it make sense to you? We'll do this poll, and then after that, we'll jump into any questions that you all may have.
Yeah, so I popped up that poll. Let us know what you think. Obviously, this was a very condensed version of what is OPD. And as Joe alluded to, we'll be having a webinar series now that will talk about how you go from ad hoc to standardized to organizational to strategic to then generating value. So stay tuned for that in the coming weeks and months, as Joe mentioned. But we'll end the poll, and I'm just going to share because I think the results are interesting, and it also just guarantees that the subsequent webinars are going to be really, really important to, again, further defining exactly what organizational project delivery is, why it matters, how to do it successfully. And so, again, thanks everybody for joining us today on this webinar, TED Talk style. We're going to again invite everyone here to join the movement in the sense of we are at the PMO Squad leading that movement from project management, some of those things that Joe mentioned, to that organizational project delivery model. I'll put a link to kind of a page in which you can kind of join the movement yourself. And where you'll be able to stay up to date on all of the information that we have coming around the movement, organizational project delivery, the webinar series, so on and so forth. So put that in the chat for everybody. And I now I'm going to open up for questions. So if anybody has questions, I'm just popping open the Q&A right now. And I'll monitor the chat here for any, I guess, questions. Lots of comments, Joe, around very thought-provoking. Thank you. Thank you. A bunch of applause. Hello, Alex. Thanks. Thanks for joining. Nice to have you here.
A question here about cure the, or not question, but a comment, cure the disease equals less money for big pharma. Absolutely. If we actually get project management and project delivery in an organization to work with all the systems connected, so that resource management is part of strategic planning and portfolio prioritization, there are certain associations out there that may not need you to be certified, right? Because this isn't about certification in our industry. It's about being able to deliver work. I love those sorts of organizations. I'm a member of them and I get benefit from them. But 60 years ago, before they existed, people were delivering projects without certifications. So we can do this in a way that where certifications can be helpful, but understanding how systems are connected and work together is where the big impact can be for organizations. So I'm glad that people said, somewhat I understand, because tune into the next set of webinar series, because now we're going to dig into it and actually talk details. Conceptually, I'm glad I was able to get you to think. I hope you leave here thinking more about this, that curiosity of what comes next, because that's how we really start making an impact.
Yeah, and Joe, David had a good comment around this, and I think it'll be helpful as we put together those subsequent webinars. But I will be interested to understand the differentiators between the OPD, organizational project delivery, and enterprise project management, because as you and I know, Joe, that they are different. And so I think when we further define some of these different phases of that journey, that will help, I guess, answer that or explain that a little bit more, David. Good comment.
Yeah, Dory's question, is this a process or a function? It's neither. It's a connection of all of them. Our current thinking is, what's the linear process? There aren't any linear processes. They're all connected. So organizational project delivery is how do we understand the connection of all of the processes and the feedback that we receive from them? How do we bake in feedback of funding that doesn't come into an organization? Well, if that funding was supposed to staff the project management team, you have to react to it differently. And that feedback is never in our linear processes. But that sort of feedback is in OPD so that the organization can react connected and collectively to overcome the feedback we received inside the process. It's a very big change in mindset. It's viewing all of this through a different lens, not a process or function, but a connection of everything with feedback causing us to move together as an organization.
And Joel has a comment here. Is this a blend of lean thinking, systems thinking, and project management? Is that a correct statement?
Great question.
Yeah, great question.
The lean thinking, I think, is part of this, but not directly. I think indirectly, lean thinking is a part of it. We've all been a product of our environments and the feedback we've received over our careers, and lean thinking has been a part of my career. So it's part of this in theory, but not in practice. The systems thinking and project delivery, I think, is a tighter connection. Lean thinking is we're trying to be as efficient as we can, right? We're not going with the big complex diagram for you publicly, but when we work with our clients behind the scenes, we're doing that sort of understanding to make sure that we're giving them what they need. So we're using lean principles, so that it's not wasteful for folks who don't need the waste. We're working with it efficiently, kind of tied together.
Awesome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I think the chat and chatter that's happening now is exciting, I think, for Joe and I to see, and also just gets us excited about the upcoming webinars as we dive deeper into each phase of the organizational project delivery and how you get from one phase to the next and what those different phases mean specifically. So again, I'll put the PMO Squad's LinkedIn page link in the chat. Feel free to follow us there.
One
And
other comment I seen there
sure.
from Ashok, he said it's a maturity of an organization. And I'll say again, that's the standard current thinking. Putting a different lens to this and asking us to think differently, it's not maturity, it's capability. My grandmother is very mature, but she's not capable of driving a car anymore. Maturity does not equal capability. We don't care about maturity in this model. We care about capability. So again, not that they're disconnected, but we have to understand the difference between those two things. And our standard current world thinking about project delivery is all tied to maturity. And we're saying that has to stop. All the maturity models out there for PMOs and organizations are irrelevant if we can't deliver because we're not capable. And that's the component that's also a change. So thanks for pointing that out. And I just want to be clear with everybody. As you learn more about it and how we do it, I think that will be more evident and clear to folks as well. Mike,
Yeah.
thank you. Hey, Mike, nice to see you. Thanks for joining, Mike. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. As we've said a number of times now, we will have a full webinar series on this specific topic, and we'd love to see you there. So stay tuned to the PMO Squad's LinkedIn page. Obviously, if you've registered for this webinar, you'll also receive the invites through your email as well. So again, we hope to see you on the next and future PMO Squad webinars. And if there's any sort of need for any consulting or staffing of project management resources in your organization today, obviously the PMO Squad is here to help you with that. But again, thank you everybody for your time today, and obviously your comments and chatter. I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. It's not very effective. But thanks everybody again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.